Orion's belt. So you can ask if the spacing of two stars is a certain amount, and there's a relative spacing also of the third star. Then if the pyramids were made to model the belt of Orion, then you would expect the relative spacing from A to B is the same as the relative spacing A to B versus B to C, just labeling three of them in a row as A, B, and C. A to B, B to C. A to B divided by B to C is some number. And you would expect that if ancient astronauts were trying to mimic that, they would design the pyramids, the three pyramids, to have the same ratio. That's pretty damn close, so far as I can tell. Also, there's the two biggest pyramids, starting with the two biggest pyramids and drawing a line from one to the peak of one to the peak of the second. The third smaller pyramid lies off that line by a certain angle, about 20 degrees. Actually, the stars are about 25 degrees, but the pyramids themselves are about 20 degrees. Point being is that they got pretty close to mirroring what was up in the sky, and we say to ourselves, this is admirable. Think of all the blocks that they had to. Well, we know the pyramid was made by putting one block on top of another, and built in layers. So you ask yourself, were human beings able to? Well, first of all, I say you have to be able to plan ahead, way ahead. So when you lay the base of the pyramid out, you've already determined that the top part of the pyramid is going to be in a certain location. How accurate can you be? Can human beings be that accurate so they don't accidentally build a pyramid in the wrong place? You have the same sort of situation with Stonehenge. It's always struck me that these appear to be boulders, the tall, big stones. They don't appear to have worked the stones at all. They just grabbed things that were the right size and stuck them up. Why make it like that? Why not use small? If you're just trying to build a calendar, why not build it out of small chunks of stone, like bricks? Build Stonehenge out of bricks, and then it would be a lot easier if you have to make adjustments later on. If you put these big boulders up and stand them up, and you got a viewing angle between two boulders and over the heel stone, for example, from the heel stone through the slots between a couple of boulders. If they're in the right place, you're fine. But if they're in the wrong place, how do you make adjustments? Because ancient man could move big boulders, I suppose, if they took the time to do it. But could they position these things accurately enough to be worthwhile once it's built? Or because I can't see having them stand up these boulders that hold the so-called trilithons. If the boulder's in the wrong place when it stands up, can you move it sideways to make an adjustment? Ancient man would have a tough time moving these boulders. If a boulder happened to be off by a few inches, you have to take a 10 or 20 ton huge piece of stone and move it a few inches to get correction. So you have to think a little bit about the arguments of the well,
I'll be honest with you, Bruce. I've heard people claim, like the pyramids, for example, they dug a canal where the quarry was, where they cut these precise stones that weighed tons, and they supposedly put them on a barge and floated them down where they were building the pyramid. Now, when I did a lot of checking in it, I don't think you could just go through the desert and dig a canal and put water in it and not act like a sponge, let alone have the technology even to build the barges to handle a couple ton, blocks, let alone being able to unload them off the barges and to do what they did. I got a funny feeling we had help, or it wasn't even done by us. It was done by slaves that were maybe brought here or engineered here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I acknowledge the value of the argument having to do with if you build a pyramid, can you build a pyramid at all? But suppose somebody tells you to build a pyramid in a particular place and in such an orientation it's going to align with another one or something like that. It's got to have the requirement is when you get to the top is at a certain location. The top of the pyramid is let's say an area of a few square feet or so. On top of a pyramid which is 500 feet on a side, 700 feet high. Could you build out of blocks or whatever way you're going to do in such a way as to have the top part in the right place in space? We could do it with structures, basically building piece by piece until you get up. But then the final act would be to adjust the positions of structural members so that the top is in a certain location. And here we're talking about comparing the three big pyramids in Egypt with Orion's belt. Orion's belt you can look at and see there's a certain ratio of length between stars A, B, and BC. There's a certain ratio, and there's an angle off axis of the smallest star compared to a straight line drawn between the two brightest stars. That's 25 degrees is the off straight angle, and not a straight line between those three. If you're going to try to mirror that on the Earth, you might say, well, I'll build the pyramid to be 99% accurate, and then in the last percent, I will use that last percentage as a final adjustment. I can hardly see somebody building a pyramid with multi-ton blocks, building this huge structure, and then at the very last top having to adjust something, one of these big blocks, maybe a couple of inches, in order to make it in the right place. It's the accuracy of construction, not the mere fact of construction, but the accuracy of it.
We'd have a hard time doing it with computers. Hey, our time is virtually up. What books do you have out? And I know you can find them on Amazon, but why don't you give the titles of the books you wrote?
Well, the FBI CIA UFO Connection, which we talked about before. Abduction in My Family, which is a combination of a fact book and a fiction story. But by the time you get finished with that book, you'll be a pretty good expert on the whole subject and have some idea of what abduction does to you or to your family. And then 3 Minutes in June, the UFO sighting that changed the world. That's the Kenneth Arnold sighting. And most recently, The Legacy of 1952, the year of the UFO. And that gives you a lead up to the year of 1952, a lead up to the year of 1952, but also it concentrates on what happened in 52. And the legacy of 1952 was this tendency to cover up. Never forget Maccabee's first rule for debunkers: any explanation is better than none.
Hey, Bruce.
And the second rule is, if the first explanation doesn't hold water, try another one and keep on until you come up with something.
Hey, Bruce, I want to thank you for coming on the show again. I appreciate. I know it's late where you're at, again, I want to thank you because, I mean, without you, I don't think ufology would have even evolved as far as it has. We need people like you in ufology, and you've done a lot for the subject and what it is. And, you know, I just want to say thank you from my heart.
Agreed.
Well, thank you, and I invite you all to scan through the collection of papers on my website. There's more stuff there that meets the eye.
Now, how can they find your website?
brumac.mysite.com. BRUMAC.MISITE.com. You changed it in my bio on your website, right?
I sure did. Up on the website. It's been changed.
Thank you.
Okay, Bruce. Well, you have a good one and say hi to your wife for me, will you?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you have a good night, my friend.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, we actually got more tonight from Bruce than the 5 other times that he's been on the show. And we had some good conversations about a lot of different subjects, including, you know, the pyramids and all that stuff, you know, and accuracy, how they had to been made. I don't think mankind could have done it. Well, you know, face it, even with computers, we would have a hard time building something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we could do it today. And
we can't.
Yeah, I learned some stuff about the Japan flight and the Hudson Valley River stuff. So that was good.
Oh, yeah. And somebody sent me an email. They say, when is your show going to be syndicated? It is. You know, I just never used the word syndication. Never thought about it. I always say, hey, we're on the radio station. Yes, we're syndicated to some stations. If you don't hear us in your local area, you can certainly call up your program director or the program director or the owner of the station and say, hey, why aren't you carrying Night Dreams Talk Radio? And also make sure you share us on your media. You know, I'd like to have more listeners. Nothing wrong with that. And everybody, you know, till tomorrow, I just want everybody the best. And I'm going to tell everybody what our guest is, but I got to pull my logbook. So if you can talk for 1 minute while I grab my logbook.
Yeah, our guest tomorrow night is Michael Lee Hall. We will be discussing UFOs.
Oh, yes.
And Thursday, we're going to have Rob Shelsky talking Mothman, and Friday, Tony Raffin talking ghosts and spirits. But tomorrow, Michael Lee Hall, UFOs.
Yeah, so that should be really interesting. And then coming up next week, we got some great guests again in ufology. We have a lot of them all the way up to March. Now, if you have had an encounter or you wrote a book on ufology or Mothman or cryptics or what have you, and you want to get your book out, known, you know, with the listeners to, you know, maybe buy it off of Amazon, you can contact us and you can become a guest. But you got to make sure you have at least an hour's worth of content of talking about your book. I don't want to hear, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to, you know, give any details of my book away. Come on, it doesn't work that way. You can get a hold of us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. That's nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. A big shout out to all the truckers out there. This time of year, I'll tell you what, I could not imagine driving a huge truck, you know, in these weather conditions. I drove a truck for about 3 months. I got my license. I went to school. I just couldn't handle it. I had a hard enough time with a large RV diesel rig taking out mailboxes. So that was the end of my career, if anything, diesel. So, hey, till tomorrow, everybody, you take care. Again, share us on your media. And James, you got a final word.
Well, don't miss tomorrow night's show. We're talking UFOs with Michael Lee Hall. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll catch you tomorrow.
Jake the Maggot was a biker and drove his motorcycle very fast. Drove a big chop Pilot with a gang color jacket and ran down Citizens for laughs. He had an old lady named Petula who packed an automatic 45 gun. They had just come up from California where they'd shot 6 cops for fun. Jake, he thought it was the best there was down the interstate he saw. till the day he tangled with the county sheriff, who they all call 104.